How's it going, guys? Randall aka Shizakats here on the Tressa's Collectibles channel to bring you our 8-choice Oshi no Ko deck profile. B-Komachi 8-choice is the most popular deck for Oshi no Ko by a pretty wide margin, thanks to its strong advantage combos that lead up to an easy to use but still quite potent finisher. Let's not waste any time as we have a lot to go through today. This is a triple Climax combo deck, using an advantage combo at level 1 into a second advantage combo at level 2, and finally leading up to the finisher combo at level 3. Before we get into what these combos actually do, it's important to note that all three of them utilize the experience mechanic. Specifically, the Kana level 1 requires experience 2, Memcho level 2 requires experience 3, and finally the Kana level 3 combo requires experience 6. In order to satisfy these requirements, Oshi no Ko decks typically run a relatively high number of level 3 cards to send to level, and one that might not look like a level 3 on the surface. Starting us off, we have the Kana level 1, which is a cigarettes combo with a twist. On attack, with experience 2, mill the top 2 cards of your deck, add up their levels, and salvage a character with a level equal or lower than the sum. Ordinarily, this type of combo is already considered to be pretty strong thanks to its semi-selectivity on top of its ability to mill through the deck. However, this Kana has an added bonus. If you mill a sum of 2 or higher, you can additionally discard a card to salvage a character of any level. You can even salvage a level 3 character if you only milled a sum of 2. With the high volume of level 2s and 3s in the deck, it's fairly easy to mill 2 or higher and secure everything that you will need for your mid-game. The card you will be most likely grabbing off this combo is our level 2 combo, Memcho. This is a fantastic card to bridge between our level 1 and level 3 combos, as she provides a big body on both offense and defense, allowing us to maintain board presence should the mid-game go a bit longer than expected. Her actual Climax combo lets you salvage a character immediately upon Climax placement, and then she also gains an on-cancel effect until the end of the turn that lets you get 2 stock from your waiting room. More often than not, we will be picking up copies of our level 3 Kana combo off of the Memcho. The Kana combo is a healer on play, and her Climax combo pays 1 stock on attack to gain an on-cancel ability. The opponent mills the bottom 3 cards of their deck, and you burn them for 2 damage X times, where X equals the number of level 0 cards milled, including Climaxes. This can obviously result in some ridiculous high rolling where the opponent has 3 level 0s in the bottom 3, or even worse, some combination of level 0s and Climaxes, resulting in 3 burn 2s, but it also has low roll potential in that it can also just whiff entirely. Additionally, resolving the combo requires the opponent to cancel in the first place, so in order to give yourself the best possible damage spread, it's important to make Kana's initial soul damage as high as possible. You want to create situations where your opponent is either going to take a fat swing for 4 or more, or you're proccing the combo. One very easy way to accomplish this is with direct attacks, and you can create direct attacks by having your opponent run into your Memchos at level 2. This is why their relatively high defensive power can be quite instrumental to our endgame. Since both the Memcho and Kana level 3 are on-cancel combos, sometimes you will run into scenarios where your opponent cancels all of your Memchos, and you simply don't deal enough mid-game damage to make your Kana finishers dangerous. For this reason, it's important to deal as much damage outside of your Memcho and Kana attacks as possible, in order to put the pressure on your opponent once it comes time to use your on-cancel effects. One particular card that is crucial in this deck's success is the Ruby Brainstorm. Apart from being a rest self-salvage Brainstorm, which is already very strong, she has a second effect that activates on Climax placement, potentially letting you give a character 1k and 1 soul if you hit a level 1 or higher card on a top check. This allows you to up the damage output on your level 1 combo for better early game damage, while also giving Memcho and Kana higher damage to leverage their Climax combos off of. Speaking of higher damage, let's take a second to talk about the first stage event. This card has 3 different modes, making it a very versatile card to use at level 3. You can either search your deck for a Climax, give a character power and send itself to stock, or pay 4 to give a character on attack burn 3. Obviously, the Climax search mode is useful in cases where we don't already have it for our finisher turn, but the burn 3 mode can be extremely potent as well. Since the event gives the effect to our character, it can be used in conjunction with Kana's on-cancel Climax combo. If our opponent cancels either the burn or the attack, Kana will activate, which is very powerful. For the Climax ratios, there are a few different ratios that you could use. The most common are either 4-2-2, which we're using in our list, or 4-3-1. Sometimes you'll see 3-3-2, but I'm not a fan of that ratio since I want as much consistency as possible to get our level 1 Climax to get the ball rolling. 4-2-2 is a very safe ratio as it gives us higher chance to see our level 3 Climax in the late game compared to 4-3-1. However, 4-3-1 is very playable as well since we have tools such as the first stage event and a free Climax swapper that can get us to our level 3 Climax fairly easily if needed. On to the rest of the list, starting with our level 0s. Our main attacking force, and to be honest, the main attacking force of Oshi no Ko as a whole, is the Akane bottom decker. Sitting at 3500 power if you have 5 or more hand, she is a very serviceable level 0 body, and she can bottom deck the opponent's reverse character if you have 4 or less stock. Very useful against cards that need to hit the waiting room for their effects, or cards that need to send themselves to other zones in order to activate their effects, such as the I level 0. Speaking of, she's the next card on our list. When she gets reversed, you can pay 1, clock a Showbiz character from your waiting room, and send her to memory to search your deck for any Showbiz character. Usually this will be your level 1 Kana combo or a copy of your Ruby Brainstorm. Unfortunately, her power is extremely low, so she won't be contesting very much of anything, but it's nice to have a consistency piece that also allows us to retain card advantage. The Ruby Brainstorm was already mentioned earlier in the video, so let's move on to our other level 0 back row, Aqua. This card has an act effect of paying 1 and resting himself to give a character on reverse salvage. This is a guaranteed source of card advantage as long as you're able to secure a reverse, which can be accomplished fairly easily at level 1 and 2 thanks to the high offensive power of the level 1 Kana and level 2 Memcho combos. Aqua can also change into a 2-1 Aqua later on in the game by paying 1 and sending himself to memory at the start of your Climax phase. Aqua's biggest downfall is that he doesn't offer any power nor any additional utility outside of his salvage effect, but his ability to pivot into the 2-1 assist nets him a slot in our list. Onto our utility slots, starting with Akane. She's an on-play Rico, letting you fix your hand for no stock cost while also getting top deck knowledge at the same time. She also has an additional effect to send herself to stock when you cancel during her battle, which is random but potentially very powerful. With her low 500 power, she may have trouble sneaking an attack past your opponent's board, but you can give her a soul pump with Ruby Brainstorm so she can deal a normal amount of damage side attacking while keeping herself alive to potentially get value when your opponent swings into her. For our Climax Swapper, we are so privileged to have this Ruby level 0. She Climax swaps for free, no stock needed, as long as the Climax we are discarding and the Climax we are picking up are both choice Climaxes. Hey, look at that, we're running a choice, so this is a no-brainer. Ordinarily, a lot of decks only run one Climax Swapper, but because we are running 3 different Climaxes, we may want more access to our Swapper to ensure that we always have the right Climax. So we're running 2 in our list instead of 1. Memcho is an on-play and on-death drop salvage. The handy double timing gives us more flexibility in what we want to pick up, while also giving us extra opportunities to use the effect if we really need to use it twice. She can also bounce an opponent's front row level 0 on play, which has some niche uses, but more often than not will be used to bounce an annoyingly large level 0 to clear the way for a direct attack. This Kana level 0 is a shot PR for September 2024 tournaments. She has a variation on the helmet effect. Instead of discarding 1 and sacrificing herself to waiting room to salvage a character, she discards 1 and sends herself back into the deck to grab a character from the deck. Very handy card, but like all helmets, it is a -1, so it's best used when we're already well off on card advantage. This is also a fantastic card to grab off Memcho combo since we can expect to keep a good portion of our level 2 board in most matchups, and our level 3 Kana doesn't require any extra hand, so we can cash in our helmet effect to grab exactly what we need. This Memcho level 0 is a very funny card. Act pay 1, send a Showbiz character from your level zone to waiting room, and then send herself to level zone to top check 4 and add a level 1 or higher card. Just like normal Fukajiro effects, this can grab events, which is useful for getting a copy of the first stage event. While Memcho's in level, she's treated as level 3, which I probably shouldn't need to explain is very strong in this deck, which needs to meet experience requirements. If you find yourself needing to level an important level 3 character like the Kana level 3 combo, you can use this Memcho to get it back into your deck rotation while still maintaining your experience. Just one last note, you must send a character to waiting room for the cost. So if you only have the first stage event in level zone, you cannot use Memcho to get it out. Akane has top check 2 rearrange and an on-play top check X effect, which can be very useful in the late game for digging towards a Kana climax or a first stage event to grab it out of the deck. The top check 2 rearrange is especially good with the Ruby Brainstorm to help rig the top card of the deck and get that extra +1 soul. Our final level 0 is the Aqua Clock Swapper. This clock swap will have a limited range of cards that it can grab at any given point, but it's free, so if you see a card that you want in your clock, you can go ahead and grab it. This can also grab events or even climaxes, so sometimes a refresh point climax can become a boon rather than a punishment. Aqua also has a free refresh ability that can be extremely useful if you find yourself in a poor deck state. At level 1, we're only running one card other than our combo, which is the Memcho support. She gives 1k global to all other Showbiz characters during our turn, and when you play a climax, she gives all of your characters, including herself, 500 extra power. She also has an effect that allows your choice climaxes to pick up first stage when triggered, which is the main reason that I think this card should be played. I actually tend to field this as a front row character more often than as a back row character. Her offensive power with the climax is usually enough to contest many popular level 1 characters that have high offense and low defense. And I prefer to keep my backline as either double Brainstorm or Brainstorm plus Aqua. Of course, if the game state allows, she's a perfectly serviceable backline support as well. But the main idea of the card is to increase my options to get first stage into hand, since it can't be picked up by Climax Combos the same way my level 3 Kanas can. Moving on to the level 2s, we have the Aqua Assist, which, as mentioned earlier, can be changed into from the level 0 Aqua. He is a level assist and gives an additional 1k anywhere whenever your Ruby, Memcho, or Kana declares an attack. This 1k buff is extremely crucial in the current English metagame as it allows Memchos to swing for 13k into Murons even if you whiff your Ruby Brainstorm's top check. Being able to crack that 12,500 defensive power can really change the game in your favor if your opponent wasn't respecting your offense and preparing counters. Aqua also has a third effect that interacts specifically with the Kana combo. When she attacks in the front row center slot, you can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and either leave it on top or send it to the bottom of their deck. Sending a climax to the bottom can be extremely strong as it not only eliminates a cancel, but also prepares a burn 2 off of Kana combo if it gets cancelled. However, you only get one shot since it only works on the center slot Kana, and for that reason I consider this effect to be less important than the other two, but still incidentally can be very useful. We run one anti-change Aqua counter to deal with opposing early play threats. With the large defense of our Memchos, we can not only use this counter to threaten the opponent's early play living, but also just to defend them and open up a direct attack on our next turn. The sack aspect of the cost can also be useful to deny on reverse abilities or open lanes to force our opponent to direct attack and potentially overswing when they're going for the kill. Just the presence of an anti-change counter is also important to ward off aggression from decks like Akane Oshinoko or Goat's Nazarick, since those decks rely on their early plays in order to play the game and cannot afford to lose them. At level 3, we have the Memcho early play. This is a 2 or less climax early play with a very strong on-play effect. With experience 3, we get to choose between one of two effects. Either we can top check 3, add 1 to our hand, and put the rest back on top of our deck in any order, which sets up Ruby Brainstorm by the way, or we can ditch 1 to heal any Showbiz character in our clock back to our hand. Either of these two modes is extremely powerful, and the fact that we get the option between the two is even better. We play 3 copies in our deck even though we're only likely to play at most 1 per game, since Memcho is arguably our best level target for experience. The final card in our list is the One of Kana Bouncer. On play, you can bounce an opponent's character, and then if you want to, you can discard 1 to bounce another opposing character. Additionally, if played into a full board, you get to refund 1 stock from the waiting room. This can be an excellent way to increase soul damage for your Kanas in the late game via direct attacking. But more importantly, the bounce is most useful for getting rid of opposing characters in matchups where they have powerful defensive counters, such as anti-damage or rest counters. This is also useful in the Shakugan no Shana matchup to bounce the 1/1 Yuji and bring your burn effects back online. For matchups where you don't need the bounce, you can always consider leveling this card for experience. The game plan for this deck is a bit complicated simply due to the tools we've been given, or rather, the lack thereof. As we mentioned early on, we want to try to deal a lot of early game damage before we bring out our Memchos to give ourselves a buffer in case our opponent cancels our swings and we could potentially fall behind in damage. However, the level 0 game of Oshinoko simply does not support going all-out aggression from the get-go. Apart from our 3500 Akane, Ai is basically our only plussing option, and she's vulnerable to common removal such as 7 Deadly Sins Escanor Bomb. Additionally, the Akane can only be 3500 power if we have 5 or more hand, which means that early try fielding will drop her power significantly, due to lack of hand size. Counterintuitively, you will want to play the early game of this deck a bit on the conservative side, ensuring that you will have resources moving forward. From level 1 onward, the game plan is fairly straightforward, assuming that your setup was successful. Kana level 1 combo will ideally be adding Memchos to our hand to use at level 2, which will in turn grab Kana finisher to use at level 3. Keep an eye out for the first stage event as well, as it can be both an insurance tool to find our climax, or a damage tool to supplement our endgame. At level 3, there are 2 common routes to take for the finisher turn. Triple Kana, the most common setup, is 7 stock, but as a baseline it only represents 9 damage before direct attacks and Ruby Soul Pumps are taken into account. It becomes more potent the closer your opponent is to level 4 before you begin, because if they take the attacks, they're just going to die. However, if your opponent is farther away from death and they can afford to take some attacks, a setup with more range is double Kana plus the burn 3 from first stage, which requires 8 starting stock instead of 7. This setup gives you a baseline of 11 damage before any soul increases, assuming your third lane is a character with 1 base soul. Compared to the triple Kana setup, you only have 2 instances of Kana combo backing up your damage, but if you can stick some soul damage, especially on the non-Kana lane, this setup will often perform better overall. Now let's take a quick moment to talk about Memcho level 2. Personally, I run this card over the Aqua level 2 support. It can call Memcho combo out of the deck, gives global 1k power, and can rearrange the top 2 cards of your deck every turn in order to help rig the Ruby Brainstorm top checks. In my opinion, the main reason to be running Aqua support right now is to combat Muron power lines as mentioned earlier, but I think that the Memcho support does a better job of contributing to the core strategy of the deck. If you were to run this support, I would also consider dropping the Aqua level 0s since they would no longer have a 2-1 Aqua to change into, and I would instead run a 4th Ruby Brainstorm and a 2nd Akane. The Akane having top check 2 rearrange is, again, very useful for Ruby Brainstorm and keeping our deck's damage as consistently high as possible at all stages of the game. Feel free to try out both the Aqua version and the Memcho version and tell us what you think. They're both plenty viable, and it mostly depends on what aspects of the deck you want to prioritize. And that's going to do it for our Oshi no Ko 8-choice deck profile. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below, and be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for more Oshi no Ko content. Up next is our gameplay block, where we have a wide variety of Oshi no Ko decks to show you guys, so you will not want to miss those. Until then, this has been Randall aka Shizukats on the Tressa's Collectibles channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!